I looked at the foot of the bed and saw Dr. Nicopolis, who was pacing there at the foot of the bed, and I thought, wow, you know, that looks like Elvis's doctor.
For decades, fans believed every mystery surrounding Elvis Presley had been solved: his fame, his fall, his untimely death. But a recent scientific breakthrough has shaken that belief to its core. A team of researchers quietly examined the king's preserved DNA, and what they uncovered left even experts speechless. Could the truth about Elvis lie in his blood and not in history books? As the results unfold, one thing becomes clear: the legend of Elvis Presley is far from over. It's only just begun. The blood that built a legend. The doctor, Sarah Mitchell, looked at her computer screen in wonder. Elvis's family came from many places: Scotland, Ireland, and Cherokee people who lived in Tennessee long before it was called Tennessee. Elvis wasn't just a boy from a small town. He was like America itself, many different people mixed into one person. Elvis's family had more than musical talent in their blood. They also had serious health problems that passed from parent to child. Their hearts often failed young. Their blood pressure got too high. They got diabetes. Elvis's grandfather passed away at only 46 years old. His mother Gladys was always sick, and doctors couldn't figure out why. The Presley family was special. They had amazing gifts, but also terrible diseases. Dr. Mitchell pointed to something amazing on her screen. Elvis had genes like Olympic runners and world-class dancers. This explained his incredible energy and how he could perform for hours without getting tired. He moved with perfect control and strength that seemed almost magical. But these same genes that made him strong also caused problems. His body burned energy very fast, like a fire that never stops. Eventually, he needed pills just to keep going. The scientists found that Elvis's genes made him more likely to become addicted to some substances. His mind never rested. He felt emotions much more strongly than most people. Dr. James Wu studied the DNA with respect and sadness. Elvis's creativity wasn't just practice or luck. It was in his biology. The genes that control feelings and mood in his brain were different from most people's. Music wasn't just something Elvis enjoyed. It was part of his DNA, built into every cell of his body. The researchers discovered more. Elvis had genes that made him feel everything more deeply. He was restless, always searching for something he could never find. His nervous system was both a gift and a problem. It let him pour real emotion into his songs, but it never let him feel calm or peaceful. Dr. Mitchell spoke quietly and sadly. Every special ability Elvis had came with a price. The strength for his performances, the emotion in his voice, the charm that made millions of people love him. All of these came from the same biology that would eventually kill him. Looking at old family photos, the pattern was clear. Many family members passed away young. They struggled with weight and tiredness. Their hearts gave up too soon. Elvis inherited both wonderful gifts and deadly problems from his family. But as the scientists looked closer at his DNA, they found something strange. Something that couldn't be explained just by family history. There was more to discover about why Elvis lived and passed away the way he did. But how did they get access to this DNA sample, and who authorized it? The vault that held the truth. In the basement of an old brick building in Memphis, a freezer hummed quietly. Inside, hidden among hundreds of old samples, was a small bottle with an important date written on it: August 16, 1977, the day Elvis Presley passed away. Dr. Patricia Chen's hands shook when she picked up the small, icy bottle. The label was almost worn away, but she could still read one name clearly: Elvis Aaron Presley. The sample had been frozen for 46 years. Nobody had touched it or even remembered it was there. Old records showed that Dr. George Nicopolis sent it. People called him Dr. Nick. He was Elvis's doctor. He sent the sample just days after Elvis passed away. Next to the bottle was an old, torn note. It said, "For future health research, handle with extreme care." Marcus Webb studies medical history. He thinks he knows why Dr. Nick saved this sample. Dr. Nick had watched Elvis get sicker and sicker in strange ways. He was always tired, confused, and hurt for no clear reason. Webb believes Dr. Nick knew something was seriously wrong with Elvis, but doctors back then couldn't figure out what it was. So Dr. Nick saved the sample, hoping that someday future scientists would find the answer. The bottle held hair and a tiny bit of tissue, just enough for modern DNA testing, but so small that everyone forgot about it. Over the years, 3 different groups owned the building. 4 different teams of scientists worked in that basement. None of them knew the treasure hidden in the back of the freezer. Dr. Chen found it by accident. Her university had started a new project called Genetic Portraits, Historical American Icons. They wanted to study the DNA of famous Americans to understand how their biology made them who they were. And now they had Elvis's DNA. They'd requested access to every historical sample in the Tennessee Medical Archives. An intern sorting through inventory lists found a reference to Presley E. cardiac study materials. Dr. Chen recalled the moment vividly. When they realized what they were holding, silence filled the room. For 5 minutes, no one spoke, awed by the tiny tube holding the king's genetic code. But having the sample and studying it were 2 different matters entirely. The Presley estate, protective of Elvis's image and privacy even decades after his death, initially refused all requests. Letters went unanswered. Phone calls led to polite but firm rejections. It took 18 months of negotiation, legal consultations, and increasingly desperate pleas from the scientific community. Dr. Andrew Morrison, the project's lead administrator, explained how they secured permission from the Presley estate only after promising absolute secrecy. Every researcher signed volumes of legal documents. Data was coded, names removed, and leaks forbidden. Nothing could be disclosed until the family personally approved every single word. The estate's reluctance seemed to stem from more than simple privacy concerns. There were whispers of family fears, of secrets that multiple generations had kept buried, of truths that might shatter the carefully constructed mythology around Elvis's life and death. Webb spoke softly, suggesting the Presley family had long understood more than they admitted. They knew the troubling medical suspicions left unresolved and feared the DNA might expose not only Elvis's hidden truth, but their own inherited vulnerabilities. When permission finally came through in late 2024, the research team worked behind locked doors in a secure facility. Security cameras monitored every test. Results were encrypted and stored on servers with no internet connection. Even within the team, people spoke in careful whispers. No one expected the results to challenge not just history, but biology itself. However, the shocking thing about the DNA sample was what it revealed. Was Elvis's creativity in his genes? Did he have a health disorder? Keep on watching to find out more. When science met the king. The first answer appeared on the computer screen at 3:47 in the morning. Dr. Patricia Chen had been awake for 19 hours. Her eyes hurt from staring at the bright screen. When she saw what the test showed, she gasped loudly. The sound echoed through the empty room. Then she ran the test again to make sure. The results were clear. Elvis Presley had a very rare mutation, a mistake in his DNA. It was in a gene called SCN5A. Only 1 person in 10,000 has this mutation. This small change in his DNA affected his heart. It caused a problem called long QT syndrome. In simple words, his heart could suddenly stop beating without any warning, like someone turning off a light switch. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez is a heart doctor who studies genes. He looked at the test results. He said Elvis's mutation was like what doctors find in young athletes who suddenly fall down dead. One moment they seem perfectly healthy. The next moment their heart stops beating. No medicine can fix it once it happens. This mutation explained mysteries about Elvis's death. For years, people argued about illegal substances and his lifestyle. But now there was proof of something deeper, a deadly problem hidden in his DNA from birth. Elvis's heart had been a time bomb from birth, ticking quietly beneath the sequined jumpsuits and the thundering performances. Every show, every late night, every moment of stress had been playing with fire. But the team wasn't done. Deep in the mitochondrial DNA, the ancient genetic material passed only through mothers from Gladys to Elvis, they found another secret. A variation in the MT-ATP6 gene suggested his cells couldn't produce energy efficiently. His body was like a car with a faulty engine, constantly running out of gas. Dr. James Wu studied the data in silence, his expression heavy with sorrow. The results were devastating. Elvis's body had been starving for energy it could no longer create. The constant fatigue, the pills, the overeating, all desperate attempts to feed a system burning itself out. The mitochondrial disorder explained the weight that ballooned and crashed, the stamina that seemed superhuman one day and completely gone the next. Elvis wasn't lazy or weak-willed. His cells were literally betraying him, unable to convert food into the energy his explosive performances demanded. The prescription substance that eventually ended his life might have started as the only way he could function at all. Dr. Chen spoke softly, realizing the truth. Elvis hadn't been chasing escape, but relief, self-medicating a genetic flaw embedded deep within every cell of his body. Then came the third discovery, and this one made even the skeptics pause. Elvis carried a specific variation of the DRD4 gene, the 7-repeat allele that scientists had nicknamed the Wanderer gene. This mutation affected dopamine receptors in the brain, the chemicals responsible for pleasure, motivation, and reward. Dr. Sarah Klein, a behavioral geneticist, explained that individuals with Elvis's rare genetic variant were natural sensation seekers, people who required more stimulation than most, drawn instinctively to risk, novelty, and extremes. The same gene had appeared throughout history in explorers, artists, and revolutionaries, figures who either changed the world or destroyed themselves trying. Elvis carried it in abundance, his biology propelling him toward the stage, the spotlight, and the danger that came with both. A quiet life had never been in his design. His brain was wired for brilliance and burnout in equal measure. The discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Some researchers saw it as proof of tragic inevitability, a man fated by his own DNA to live fast and fall hard. Others saw defiance, a legend who rose above conditions that should have consumed him. Dr. Helen Okoye of Johns Hopkins summarized it best. The cardiac mutation, the metabolic disorder, and the dopamine variation were each survivable on their own. Combined, they formed a perfect genetic storm, one that created an extraordinary man and at the same time ensured his eventual undoing. Biographers scrambled to rewrite their narratives. Psychologists published papers reassessing Elvis's behavior through a genetic lens. The restlessness, the generosity, the paranoia, the desperate search for love and meaning, all of it suddenly had roots deeper than childhood trauma or fame's pressure. Dr. Morrison noted that while DNA doesn't dictate destiny, it sets the hand you're dealt. Elvis lived and performed brilliantly yet tragically, achieving immortality despite a genetic deck stacked heavily against him. The Presley estate remained silent, neither confirming nor denying the findings. But people who had known Elvis began speaking up, their memories now filtered through the lens of genetic truth. A former bodyguard remembered Elvis describing an internal fire, a feeling of burning from within. The DNA evidence now confirmed it was real. His body literally consumed by relentless stress. But the DNA didn't just explain his death. It hinted at something that had never been publicly discussed: the family connection. The news of Lisa Marie Presley's death in January 2023 sent researchers back to their computers with a terrible sense of recognition. She had passed away of cardiac arrest at age 54, her heart simply stopping like a song cut short. The genetic team sat in stunned silence, staring at the data they had gathered on her father just months before. The pattern was undeniable. Father and daughter, divided by 46 years, bound by the same fatal genetic thread of destiny. The SCN5, a mutation that had lurked in Elvis's DNA, was passed through bloodlines like a whispered curse. Medical records obtained through careful legal channels and family cooperation suggested Lisa Marie had struggled with similar cardiac issues. Her son Benjamin had passed away 3 years earlier at 27, not from heart failure, but the same restless desperation seemed woven through his short life. Geneticists began mapping what they called the Presley signature, a unique combination of markers that appeared again and again in family members. The cardiac vulnerability, the metabolic struggles, the dopamine receptor variation that brought both brilliance and torment. It wasn't just Elvis. It was a legacy written in chromosomes, handed down like china or silverware, beautiful and dangerous. Scientists uncovered a genetic pattern linking 3 generations of the Presley family to a shared chain of tragedy. Their research revealed deep biological vulnerabilities, suggesting that the same DNA that fueled Elvis's brilliance may have also shaped his downfall. Riley Keough, Lisa Marie's daughter and Elvis's granddaughter, became the face of a new ethical battlefield. At 35 years old, she carried genes that might predict her future. The question became, did she have the right not to know? Did the public have the right to know? Where did scientific curiosity end and human dignity begin? The Presley family fractured over the DNA revelations. Some members wanted complete transparency, believing knowledge could save lives. Others saw it as grave robbing, dressed in laboratory coats, a violation of privacy that extended beyond death itself. Lawyers sent letters. Family members stopped speaking. Graceland became a house divided. In a rare public statement, Priscilla Presley condemned the research, insisting that neither Elvis nor Lisa Marie had ever consented. Humanity, she warned, was being traded for scientific curiosity. But other voices emerged from the family tree, distant cousins who had lost children to sudden heart failure, relatives who struggled with unexplained exhaustion and weight, people who finally had answers for why their bodies betrayed them, why they felt different, why simple tasks sometimes felt impossible. One anonymous cousin expressed regret, wishing they had known sooner, hoping it might have saved a life. The public's reaction was fiercely divided, like a nation at war. Online forums erupted with debate. Some believed the research honored Elvis seeking truth, while others saw it as desecration, a violation of the sacred. The laboratory received both death threats and heartfelt letters. One fan wrote that Elvis now belonged to the world and that understanding him was deserved, while another insisted he belonged only to himself, urging that the king be allowed to rest in peace, free from scrutiny. Television programs debated the ethics. Bioethicists published editorials. Churches held discussions about the morality of genetic testing on the deceased. The question expanded beyond Elvis into something larger. In an age when DNA could be extracted from a hair or a coffee cup, did anyone truly own their own genetic information anymore? They had opened Pandora's box, and there was no closing it anymore. Insurance companies began asking quiet questions. If genetic testing could predict early death, should that affect coverage? If Elvis's genes doomed him, were his relatives uninsurable? The science that promised answers suddenly threatened discrimination. Musicians with unusual talent began wondering about their own DNA. Was genius genetic? Could it be tested? Should it be? Artists worried they'd be reduced to favorable mutations, their souls explained away by dopamine and serotonin levels. A Grammy-winning singer insisted they were more than chromosomes or genes. There was something deeper, something science could never truly measure. But the laboratory data didn't lie. The Presley family carried a genetic legacy as distinctive as blue eyes or perfect pitch. Each generation inherited not just money or fame, but a biological destiny that medicine was only beginning to understand. The question wasn't whether the genes existed, it was what humanity would do with that knowledge. Yet for scientists, the story wasn't finished. A final discovery would send shockwaves far beyond Graceland. Just when the world thought it had found all the answers, even more questions began to rise. The sample that didn't match. Dr. Patricia Chen made a shocking discovery on a Tuesday afternoon. She was running normal tests when the numbers on her screen looked wrong. She blinked, fixed her glasses, and ran the test again, then again, then again. The answer stayed the same, impossibly wrong. The DNA from the 1977 sample didn't match Elvis Presley's family members, not the way it should. The mitochondrial DNA, the kind that passes directly from mother to child without changing, showed differences that shouldn't be there. It was like a puzzle piece that almost fit, but had slightly wrong edges. Dr. James Wu looked at the data for 6 hours, completely confused. Either their testing equipment was broken, or something very strange was hidden in this DNA. The team checked everything. They tested their equipment with samples they knew were correct. They sent samples to other laboratories to double-check. Every test came back with the same answer. The DNA in that bottle was similar to Elvis Presley's, similar enough to be a relative, but not similar enough to actually be Elvis. Dr. Rodriguez studied the results carefully. The DNA was about 94% similar to verified Presley family members. This matched what you'd expect from a cousin or uncle, but not from Elvis himself. The shocking truth: this DNA wasn't Elvis's. The laboratory became chaotic. Scientists argued in meetings until midnight. Some said the sample was labeled wrong decades ago. Maybe Dr. Nick accidentally sent the wrong bottle. Others said 46 years in a freezer could have damaged or contaminated the DNA. But a small group of scientists began asking a frightening question that nobody wanted to hear. What if this means something else entirely? Dr. Sarah Klein's voice trembled as she considered the unthinkable. What if the sample truly came from Graceland's grave, yet the body buried there was never Elvis Presley at all? The conspiracy theories that had simmered for decades suddenly boiled over. Online forums crashed from traffic. Social media exploded with hashtags. Photographs from Elvis's funeral were analyzed frame by frame. The closed casket, the face that looked waxy and wrong. The rumors that had never quite ended now had genetic evidence, or at least the appearance of it. For 47 years, a seasoned conspiracy theorist had repeated the same claim on his podcast to millions. The man in that coffin wasn't Elvis Presley, and now evidence seemed to agree. The mainstream media couldn't ignore the story anymore. News anchors who had dismissed Elvis sightings as tabloid nonsense now interviewed geneticists about DNA accuracy. Television specials examined every detail of August 16, 1977. Book publishers offered million-dollar advances for insider accounts. The scientific community divided into camps. Dr. Marcus Webb held press conferences insisting the discrepancy meant nothing. He spoke with quiet authority, explaining that DNA naturally degrades over time. Old, poorly stored samples often mutate after years of freeze-thaw cycles. An expected decay, not evidence of deception or mystery, but other experts weren't convinced. Dr. Helen Okoye published a paper suggesting the variations were too specific, too consistent to be random degradation. She countered firmly, noting that contamination would cause random errors. Instead, the data showed a complete, consistent genetic profile, one that clearly wasn't Elvis Presley's. The Presley estate went into lockdown. Lawyers threatened lawsuits against anyone publishing the findings. Priscilla Presley released a statement calling the entire affair disrespectful speculation built on flawed science. But her denial only fueled more questions. If the science was flawed, why not prove it? Why not provide definitive DNA samples from Elvis's verified personal items? Private investigators began re-examining the death. Medical records from Baptist Memorial Hospital were subpoenaed. The two morticians who had prepared the body were tracked down, one dead, one refusing all interviews. Former Memphis police officers gave contradictory accounts. The more people investigated, the more the story frayed. A retired EMT recalled that day vividly. Small irregularities, moments that broke protocol. He had always assumed it was out of respect for Elvis, a way to preserve the star's final dignity. Some researchers suggested a middle explanation. Perhaps the sample was from Elvis, but Elvis himself had genetic chimerism, a rare condition where one person carries two sets of DNA. Perhaps he had absorbed a twin in the womb, and different tissues carried different genetic codes. It was scientifically possible, if extraordinarily rare. Dr. Klein explained that the condition occurred in roughly 1 in 10,000 births. Elvis's mother had lost a twin, Jessie Guerin, at birth, clear evidence of a twinning pattern within the Presley family. Others proposed that Elvis had used a body double so often in his final years that samples might have been mixed. Some suggested deliberate fraud, that someone wanted people to think Elvis had survived. A few even whispered about witness protection, government conspiracies, and elaborate disappearance schemes. The noise grew deafening. Truth became impossible to separate from fiction. Every theory had passionate defenders and damning evidence against it. Scientists who had expected to solve mysteries found themselves creating new ones instead. In the middle of confusion, the scientific team made one last attempt, and what they uncovered changed the narrative forever. The truth buried in the code. 3 months after the confusing DNA results, a package arrived from Switzerland. Inside was a brand new machine, a 4th-generation DNA sequencer that could read genes more accurately than ever before. Dr. Chen opened the box with shaking hands. She spoke quietly but seriously. This was their last chance to find the truth. The new machine worked differently than the old ones. Old machines read DNA in small pieces, like putting together a puzzle. This new machine could read entire strands all at once without breaking them up. It could tell the difference between damaged DNA and real differences. Most importantly, it could read special chemical tags on the DNA called epigenetic markers. These markers show how genes were turned on and off during a person's life. Dr. James Wu put the Presley sample into the machine early one cold February morning. The test would take 72 hours, 3 full days. Nobody went home. The team slept on couches in the break room. They took turns watching the progress bar move slowly across the screen. When the results finally appeared, the first thing they proved was identity. The DNA belonged to Elvis Aaron Presley. No question, no contamination, no mystery person. The problems the old technology found were mistakes, shadows caused by damaged DNA that the new machine could see past, like fog clearing from a road. Dr. Chen confirmed it was really him. Everyone in the room felt relieved and amazed at the same time. Every genetic marker matched perfectly, from his mother, his father, everything. It was definitely Elvis Presley. But the happiness didn't last long. As the advanced machine kept analyzing the DNA, it began revealing a much darker story. The new data showed things about Elvis's biology that explained not just how he lived, but why he passed away the way he did. Dr. Rodriguez studied the screen, her face pale. The methylation patterns, chemical scars on Elvis's genes, were unlike anything she'd ever seen outside cases of extreme trauma, war, or prolonged psychological torment. The king's DNA carried pain beyond comprehension. Epigenetics, the study of how the environment affects gene expression, has become a revolution in modern science. Stress, trauma, diet, substances, even loneliness could leave chemical fingerprints on DNA, turning genes on or off like light switches. These changes didn't alter the genetic code itself, but they changed how the body read that code. And in Elvis Presley's DNA, the epigenetic markers told a story of suffering. Dr. Sarah Klein examined the data in silence before explaining that Elvis's cortisol response genes were completely unregulated. Cortisol, the body's stress hormone, is meant to rise during danger, then fall. But Elvis never did. His system stayed locked in survival mode, flooded with stress signals that never turned off. The data showed his immune system genes were suppressed, turned off by years of exhaustion and anxiety. His inflammation markers were catastrophically high, consistent with someone experiencing chronic pain throughout their body. Even his dopamine genes, the ones that should have brought pleasure and reward, showed signs of severe depletion. Dr. Helen Okoye, called in to interpret the findings, spoke gravely. This, she explained, was what happens when a human being is driven past biological limits, the body slowly consuming itself at the cellular level. The prescription substances that ended Elvis suddenly looked less like weakness and more like desperate survival. His genes showed he was in constant pain, constantly stressed, constantly exhausted. The medications weren't recreational. They were the only thing keeping his damaged system functional enough to perform. Dr. Klein spoke softly, choosing her words with care. Elvis wasn't an addict in the usual sense, she explained. He was fighting his own biology. His genes begged for rest and silence, but his world demanded lights, applause, and endless performance. The weight fluctuations made sense now, too. His genes that control how the body uses food showed damage from constantly gaining and losing weight, and from taking too many stimulant substances. His body had lost the ability to regulate hunger, satiety, or energy storage. The physical transformation from the lean young man of the 50s to the bloated figure of the 70s wasn't about willpower. It was about genetic expression gone haywire. Most striking were the markers related to social isolation. Studies had shown that loneliness could alter gene expression, particularly genes involved in immune function and stress response. Elvis's DNA showed patterns identical to prisoners in solitary confinement. Dr. Marcus Webb noted that despite constant crowds and adoration, Elvis's genetic markers revealed something devastating. A man profoundly, even biologically, alone in the world. The team spent 6 weeks writing their report. They chose every word carefully, knowing that what they wrote would become part of history. When they finally released their findings to the Presley estate and select media outlets, the statement was 4 pages long but centered on a single paragraph. Elvis Presley's DNA reveals a man who was biologically exceptional in both his gifts and his vulnerabilities. The same genetic variations that enabled extraordinary performance also made him extraordinarily susceptible to the pressures of fame. The DNA showed signs of terrible long-term stress, loneliness, and complete exhaustion. Scientists said Elvis was a perfect example of how great talent and deep suffering can exist together in one person. Elvis didn't just die young. He lived a whole lifetime of stress packed into 42 years. When people heard this, they stopped believing conspiracy theories. They stopped saying Elvis was weak. They finally understood that Elvis hadn't failed at being human. He had succeeded at being superhuman for as long as his body could possibly last. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.